Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to go over an upgrade we just did for this little Focal Chorus 605 model. And first, let's take a look at this little thing. Small speaker, brought in for typical reasons. Sounds a little bright, a little aggressive. You know, can you smooth this thing out, blah, blah, blah. Let's take a look at the crossover that's in there. And I've got a picture of the crossover. You can see that it's got iron core inductors on the woofer. It's got electrolytic capacitors. It's got sandcast resistors. There is a little polycap on the tweeter and a little air core inductor. So pretty poor and fair. And you can just imagine what those cheesy parts are doing to the signal. Same goes for the bonding posts and steel parts that may be on those as well. And it's got a nice cone material. Typical inverted dome tweeter. It's a newer design. They've got some mesh on it to protect it, but it's a budget product. It is what it is. But it's a nice platform to tweak and do things with. Let's examine it. Let's look at the on-axis frequency response, and you look at that on-axis frequency response and you think, well, that's pretty smooth other than that big peak up there, and it's around 4 or 5 kHz or something, and you think, wow, that might be the area of brightness. And it could be some of the brightness, but that's getting up into upper level harmonics. Your typical brightness is going to be in the 1,000 to 3,000 range, specifically 1,000 to 2,000. That's where you get most of the brightness. So if you're just looking at the frequency response, the telltale what's going on really isn't there. And you can only get part of the picture from the frequency response, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. Let's look at the effect of the grill. It's got this plastic grill that snaps on, and if we look at that, you can see it disrupts the response a lot. So taking the grill off, one big step forward there and helping everything. Let's look at the horizontal off-axis, and that looks pretty good. It drops off pretty evenly. It's a little broad across the top end there, so that, there could be some brightness there if you have untreated rooms and you've got side walls that are untreated. There's going to be a little brightness there. Vertical off-axis looks great. Acoustic centers are not too far apart, so as we're moving up and down vertically, we're not changing driver offset so much, and it looks really good. Now, here's where we get into some problems. Let's look at the impedance curve, and it's imbalanced. The impedance is real high across the top. It's real low at the bottom. It dips to, where does this dip to? 3.4 ohms. So it's quite a load for you guys who have home theater receivers and things that may not like that impedance load. And then here's what really tells us information. Let's look at the spectral decay. And you can see there is some ringing going on there. There's some stored energy. There's something there. You can see one of those areas coming off of the woofer peak there that's carrying out quite a bit. And there's a secondary one there right below it. And then right there at the crossover point near the tweeter, there's another hump there. So I let Hobbs take a crack at this one. He's been learning crossover design quite a bit. He's done a really good job, and he was able to figure out what was going on here. And let's look at it. Let's look at, he came up with 2 sets of measurements. So let's look at the first, the new frequency response, and we can look at the crossover response and see he pushed that crossover point down a little bit, which has advantages. If we look at the horizontal off-axis, it looks very similar to where it was, and the vertical off-axis is improved a little, but also very similar to what it was. But let's look at what he did with the impedance. The impedance is now more balanced. So the amplifier is going to see the load the same. It's not going to try to drive more power at the woofer than it does at the tweeter because of the lower impedance load. We've got a balanced impedance load, and that's going to help in a lot of applications depending on the amplifier. Now let's look at the spectral decay, and we notice that was cleaned up quite a bit. Just getting the woofer out of those ranges and pulling the woofer down more quickly so that it isn't in that breakup area, and we're pulling that down a little more. But if you look at the spectral decay, there's still something going on there, and it doesn't really follow the lines of the woofer. In other words, there's not a woofer peak and a ringing or a decay line following it. If the woofers drop off, and then there's this decay line coming out there that's muddying things up down there in that frequency range. And there's a couple possibilities for that when you see it. It could be an internal reflection going on in the box and then coming back. Or in this case, there's a clue right here. There's a port right on the front. It could be port noise. So, thing to check is shove a piece of foam in that port and see what it does. And that helped a lot. Let's look at the on-axis responses and stuff look the same. The impedances look the same. But let's look at the spectral decay. You notice that is gone. So we're cleaning up the sound of that significantly by plugging that port. And that's a problem with some speakers that are front ported. There's higher frequency ranges that are exiting out that port because they're not being absorbed by the material that's inside the box. So let's look at the beginning spectral decay with the stock crossover and with the port unplugged versus the new crossover with the port plugged, and you'll see how much cleaner that spectral decay is. Guys, I can't tell you enough how much easier it is to listen to a speaker that decays quickly and doesn't have stored energy or ringing going on. That is very significant, and it's going to help a lot on the whole overall thing. We've got a inexpensive crossover upgrade put together for this thing that's going to have some tube connectors that's going to replace this stuff on the back, a new wiring, and we'll have that up on the website, and then we'll have another option there if you want to upgrade the caps in the tweeter circuit to Sonic caps. You can click on that too. Look online. It should launch or be there online before the video launches, and we'll have that available for you if you've got this model and you want to do a fairly inexpensive, fun DIY upgrade. It will improve this speaker by a lot in the ways of detail and clarity because of the parts quality, imaging and soundstage layering, getting things out of the signal path that shouldn't be in the signal path, and a much cleaner spectral decay. It's going to be much more pleasant to listen to and no more brightness. So that's it for this one. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.